The morning sun had just begun to rise, casting a golden hue across the sleepy town. The air was crisp, filled with the scent of dew-soaked earth and pine trees. A father stood by the porch of a modest house, checking his fishing gear one last time. His little daughter, no more than 7 or 8 years old, bounded out of the front door with excitement in her eyes and a backpack nearly as big as she was. Today was special. It wasn't just another weekend, it was their planned fishing trip, something they had talked about for weeks. For her, it was an adventure. For him, it was a chance to make memories, to bond, to pass on the simple joy of nature and time spent together, away from screens and schedules. He gently helped her into the car, buckling her seatbelt with a warm smile. She giggled, clutching a small digital camera they had decided to bring along. To document everything, she'd said with enthusiasm. As they drove out of town, the camera rolled, capturing shaky, joyful footage of trees whizzing by, roadside signs, and silly faces made at each other. There was laughter, the kind that filled the car and warmed the heart. They sang along to songs on the radio, occasionally stopping so she could snap a picture of a deer or a hawk soaring overhead. By the time they arrived at the lake, the sky had turned a brilliant blue. The father unloaded the gear, and she ran to the water's edge, marveling at the stillness, the gentle ripples lapping the shore. He called out to her, and she turned back, grinning, her eyes wide with wonder. They set up their spot, a couple of folding chairs, a cooler, and a simple tackle box. The camera, now perched on a small tripod, kept recording. What it captured was something pure and beautiful, a father and daughter ready to make a memory that was supposed to last forever. The sun climbed higher into the sky, its rays glinting off the surface of the calm lake as father and daughter settled into their fishing spot. The gentle sound of birdsong mixed with the soft plop of baited lines breaking the water's surface. Sitting side by side on foldable chairs, the father patiently showed his daughter how to hold the fishing rod, how to cast it just right, and how to stay still so as not to scare away the fish. Her small hands struggled at first, but he guided her gently, his voice calm and reassuring. Each cast was an effort filled with anticipation, and each small splash brought a gleam of excitement to her eyes. The camera, still running from the shore, caught these tender moments in their raw, unfiltered form. Her laughter echoed as she tangled the line for the third time, and his patient chuckles showed a deep affection that only a father could feel. He didn't care if they caught anything. For him, watching his daughter try, fail, and try again was reward enough. She asked endless questions, about the fish, the lake, the birds and the trees, and he answered every single one, savoring the chance to share his knowledge and watch her absorb it all with wonder. Then, unexpectedly, her line tugged. She froze. The rod bent slightly, and her eyes widened. "I got one," she squealed. He moved beside her quickly, helping her reel it in, both of them giddy with excitement. The moment was chaotic and thrilling. Water splashed, the rod wobbled, and with one final pull, a small fish broke the surface. She stared at it in awe, mouth open in disbelief. He beamed with pride as she held it up for the camera, her hands trembling slightly with a mix of fear and joy. They let the fish go, watching it swim away into the depths. She clapped, already asking if they could catch another. For the next few hours, they fished, talked, and laughed, forgetting the world beyond the trees. Time seemed to pause, giving them a perfect, sunlit memory suspended in the stillness of nature. Everything felt safe, simple, and whole, as if nothing could ever go wrong. As the sun began its slow descent behind the trees, casting long shadows across the forest floor, the day took on a cooler, quieter tone. The father and daughter were still by the lake, now surrounded by a peaceful stillness that came with the approach of dusk. Their laughter had softened into quiet conversation and contentment. The camera, set aside on a rock nearby, continued recording intermittently. At some point, they had stopped fishing and begun simply enjoying the moment, skipping stones, sharing snacks, and talking about school, dreams, and silly memories. But then, just as the sun touched the horizon, something changed. The light dimmed quickly, and a sudden wind stirred the trees with an eerie rustle. The girl glanced around, her smile fading a little, and the father, noticing the change in weather, stood up, scanning the surroundings. The lake, once calm and inviting, now seemed deeper, darker. He checked his watch, and his expression tightened. They had stayed longer than planned. He began packing their things, calling her over gently, urging her to help quickly so they could start heading back before nightfall. Then, a strange sound echoed from the woods, a distant crack, maybe a branch breaking, or something else. The father froze for a second, eyes narrowing toward the trees. The girl sensed his unease and clutched his hand, asking what that sound was. He offered a reassuring smile, but there was tension in his voice now, and he moved with more urgency. They grabbed the camera and gear, ready to return to the trail that led back to their car. But as they reached the edge of the clearing, something made them stop again. Perhaps it was another sound, closer this time, or something they saw that the camera didn't fully capture. The footage became shaky, blurred images of trees, rustling leaves, and hurried footsteps. That was the last clear recording the camera caught. After that, the video went dark, save for muffled audio, the rush of movement, a distant call, and then silence. When the family at home realized the pair hadn't returned that night, panic set in. Phone calls were made. A search was organized. The lake, once a place of joy and tradition, became a focal point of concern. No one knew yet what had happened, only that the father and daughter had vanished without a trace. What began as a peaceful outing was now a haunting mystery. Days had passed since the disappearance, and the once quiet lakeside had turned into the center of a growing search operation. Local authorities, rescue teams, and volunteers combed through the woods, scouring the trails and nearby cabins, but each day that passed without a clue only deepened the sense of dread. Flyers with photos of the father and daughter were posted at gas stations, pinned to trees, and shared across social media. Despite the intense effort, there were no footprints, no clothing, no signs of struggle, nothing. The lake remained still and secretive, hiding whatever truth it might have held. It wasn't until nearly a week later, on a morning thick with fog, that a hunter wandered into the forest with no idea he was about to find something critical. He was local, experienced, and familiar with the area, out early in the hopes of tracking deer. His boots crunched over damp leaves as he moved slowly through the woods. A sudden glint caught his eye, something metallic among the brush, half buried beneath fallen branches near the edge of the lake. Curious, he knelt down and cleared away the debris, revealing a small digital camera, scratched and wet but intact. He held it up, puzzled. The hunter knew about the missing father and daughter. The entire community had been shaken by the story. He examined the camera, wiping it clean with his sleeve. It was definitely not something you'd expect to find deep in the woods, far from any trail. He looked around, noting how isolated the area was. There were no signs of people, no clothing, no campsite, just this camera sitting oddly out of place. His heart began to race. He immediately returned to his truck and drove straight to the authorities. That afternoon, investigators carefully retrieved the footage from the water damage device. What they found was a mixture of joy and terror. The early videos were full of laughter, fishing, and bonding. But toward the end, the tone shifted, hurried footsteps, anxious voices, abrupt camera angles. The footage stopped abruptly, leaving more questions than answers. The discovery of the camera was the first real lead since the disappearance. It confirmed where they had been and hinted at when things started to go wrong. For the hunter, it was a chilling moment. A casual morning walk turned into a brush with something much darker. The forest, quiet and beautiful as always, had finally given up a piece of its secret. Inside the dimly lit office of the local sheriff's department, a small group of investigators, family members, and technical specialists gathered around a monitor. The camera found in the woods had been carefully dried and restored, and its memory card, though slightly damaged, was mostly intact. Tension filled the room as the first video file loaded. No one spoke. The only sound was the low hum of the computer as the screen flickered to life. The first clips brought tears and faint smiles. The father and daughter were full of joy, laughing, teasing each other, taking turns filming one another. The girl narrated their trip with the enthusiasm only a child could bring, zooming in on her father's smiling face, the glimmering lake, their sandwiches, and even a squirrel that came too close. These moments were pure and full of life. For the family watching, it was both comforting and devastating to see them so happy, unaware of what was to come. As the videos progressed, the tone slowly shifted. The sun grew lower, the lighting darker. In one clip, the father is seen glancing over his shoulder repeatedly, his voice tighter, the carefree tone gone. The daughter, sensing the change, became quieter. Then came the shaky footage, blurry images of trees, rapid movement, and a low murmur of worried voices. In one chilling clip, the father whispers something urgently, barely audible over the rustling leaves and wind. He tells her to stay close, to keep quiet, to hold his hand. The screen went black for several seconds in the final video. Then a sudden burst of static, and the image returned briefly, a chaotic swirl of branches, the ground, a quick glimpse of the girl's frightened face. A loud crack or snap echoed just before the footage cut out completely. There were no screams, no final goodbye, just sudden silence. It was as if the forest had swallowed them whole. The room remained still for a long moment after the last file ended. No one spoke. The investigators reviewed the timestamps, analyzing every frame, noting the shifting light, trying to determine the direction they had been heading. Forensic technicians examined the sound for background clues, running water, echoes, animal noises, anything that could narrow down their location. But it wasn't just evidence. It was personal. The footage humanized the tragedy, turning a missing persons case into something painfully intimate. The family watched their loved ones, frozen in time, sharing their final moments of joy and fear. The discovery of the camera had answered one question: yes, they had been there. But it also deepened the mystery of what happened next, and why they never made it back. The camera had become the single most vital piece of evidence in the ongoing investigation. Investigators studied it with meticulous care, poring over every frame and every sound in the recordings. Though brief and fragmented, the final moments captured by the device held layers of potential clues, subtle details that could illuminate what had happened during those last haunting minutes in the woods. The camera's footage was now a silent witness, the only one that had seen what no person yet understood. Digital forensics experts enhanced the audio, isolating background sounds that weren't immediately noticeable, a distant rustling that didn't seem like wind, the faint crackling of branches, even a strange echo, as if something or someone was moving nearby, hidden beyond the lens. The father's voice in the latter clips, once warm and instructive, now carried a sharp urgency, as though he sensed a threat approaching. One sentence was pulled from the audio with chilling clarity: "Stay behind me. Don't let go." It was spoken low, firm, protective. Then the sound of hurried movement, not running, but purposeful, almost stealthy. In one blurry frame, investigators noticed a dark shape in the background, indistinct but clearly not part of the natural landscape. The image was enhanced and analyzed repeatedly, but it was too unclear to confirm whether it was a person, an animal, or simply a visual distortion. Still, it was enough to raise questions: were they being followed? Was someone else out there in the woods that day? The timestamps on the video gave a rough timeline of events. The first recordings started around 9 a.m. The happy fishing clips lasted until about 3:40 p.m. The shift in mood began around 4 p.m., and by 4:27 p.m., the footage had turned frantic. The last discernible video ended at 4:31 p.m. Just 4 minutes of chaos, but possibly the most crucial 4 minutes in the entire case. Investigators used geographical cues from the footage, the slope of the terrain, the angle of sunlight, the layout of trees, to estimate where the final clips had been recorded. They matched these against maps, aerial photography, and terrain models to zero in on possible locations. It was painstaking work, made harder by how vast and wild the surrounding forest was. Still, hope stirred for the first time in days. The footage, eerie as it was, offered more than speculation. It gave the search teams a new direction, a trail to follow. For the father's family, watching the footage brought immense pain, but also a sliver of relief. They hadn't simply disappeared. They had fought to return. The camera had not only preserved memories, it had also preserved evidence, breadcrumbs in the form of video fragments, each one holding a potential key to the truth. With the new information gleaned from the camera footage, the search efforts transformed from a broad, uncertain sweep into a more targeted, urgent mission. The authorities mapped out the area where the final clips had likely been filmed, using GPS coordinates, tree patterns, and terrain gradients seen in the video. The footage had offered the first tangible lead, real, time-stamped evidence of their last known location. Search and rescue teams, now fueled by fresh hope and a renewed sense of direction, began combing the identified stretch of forest with increased precision. Dozens of volunteers joined professionals, park rangers, local hikers familiar with the area, scent detection dogs, even drone units equipped with infrared cameras. The weather, once a clear obstacle due to fog and scattered rain, had finally cleared, allowing aerial surveillance to cover wider ground. Helicopters hovered low over the canopy while teams on foot scoured ravines, thick underbrush, and caves that could easily hide someone or something from view. At the base of operations near the lake, a large tent was set up with maps spread out, flags marking search progress. Every hour, teams checked in, reporting what they found: footprints, broken branches, signs of recent human presence. Some paths led nowhere, but others raised questions. A broken fishing rod, half buried under leaves. A child's sock caught on a low bush. Items that could have belonged to them, or to any hiker passing through, but each was treated as potentially critical. The family stood by anxiously, joining in where they could. The mother, sleepless and hollow-eyed, refused to leave the site. She helped coordinate with volunteers, handed out water bottles, made calls, and prayed silently every time a radio crackled with an update. The entire community felt the weight of the mystery now. It wasn't just about a missing father and daughter anymore. It was about bringing someone home, about answering questions no one should ever have to ask. As the days wore on, the forest seemed more enigmatic. The deeper the teams searched, the stranger things felt. Some volunteers reported hearing things, snapping twigs when no one else was near, fleeting shapes just out of view. Whether it was nerves, exhaustion, or something more, no one could say. But the sense of unease never left. Despite the fear and frustration, no one gave up. The camera had given them a glimpse of the past, an outline of those last moments, but the search teams were determined to find out what happened after the footage stopped. Every hour mattered, every clue brought them closer. And though the woods remained silent, dense, and full of secrets, the searchers pushed forward with the hope that somewhere, somehow, the forest might finally give up the rest of its story. Weeks had passed since the search began, and the forest had grown colder, quieter, as if mourning alongside those still waiting for answers. The urgency that once drove the search had settled into something deeper, determination blended with sorrow. And then, one gray morning, just as the first frost clung to the forest floor, a breakthrough came. A search team following a narrow animal trail stumbled upon something almost hidden by nature itself, a weathered backpack, leaning against the trunk of a fallen tree. Inside, neatly packed, were small belongings: a child's sweater, snacks now long expired, and a small notebook filled with scribbled drawings of fish, trees, and stick figure adventures. It was hers. A few hundred feet away, partially concealed by undergrowth, they found them. The father and daughter, side by side, resting in a shallow ravine. No signs of violence, no injuries to suggest foul play, just exhaustion and exposure. The father had his arms wrapped around her as if trying to shield her from the cold, to comfort her even in the final hours. Time and the elements had taken their toll, but there was peace on their faces. They had stayed together. He had protected her until the end. The news sent a wave of emotion through the community. Tears flowed freely, of grief, of closure, of heartbreak and gratitude. For the family, it was devastating, but also a release. The long days of uncertainty were over. The questions had answers. They could finally bring them home. In the days that followed, a small memorial was placed near the lake, a wooden bench, engraved with their names, facing the water where they had shared one last joyful day. People came to sit quietly, to leave flowers and notes. Some brought fishing lures, others small toys. The camera was returned to the family, now a treasured relic of love and loss. They watched the footage again, not for evidence, but for the memories, for the laughter, the inside jokes, the simple beauty of a father and daughter's bond. The story spread far beyond their town. It touched strangers, reminded people of the fragility of time and the importance of the moments we often take for granted. What started as a tragic mystery became something else entirely, a testament to love, to courage, and to the deep, enduring bond between a parent and child. Though the forest had taken them, it could not erase who they were. Their story, recorded in joyful footage and sealed by quiet bravery, lived on. Not as a tale of loss alone, but as a reminder to hold close the people we love, to live fully, and to treasure the time we are given.